How much wealth does Trump's son-in-law really have? Jared Kushner's multi-billion-dollar game is spread across the Arab world. In the darkness of night, when offices in most of the world's capitals have already shut down, some phone calls still continue. Calls that change not just the fate of countries, but also the direction of markets. Somewhere there is talk of a ceasefire, somewhere bargaining over sanctions, somewhere tension over oil routes, and somewhere, in the name of peace talks, a new game of influence begins. In this restless atmosphere, one name keeps appearing again and again. A name that is neither a career diplomat nor an elected leader, and yet seems present in the middle of the most sensitive matters of the Middle East: Jared Kushner. The fear is this: if politics and business sit at the same table, will the decision be about peace or profit? And the curiosity is this: how exactly did Donald Trump's son-in-law become so powerful, and how much wealth does he really have? These days, the new talks going on between America and Iran have made the entire global diplomatic circuit uneasy. According to reports by Reuters and AP, the US delegation for these high-stakes talks being held in Pakistan is being led by Vice President J.D. Vance, and along with Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner is also present. On the other side, Iran is represented by big names like Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bakr Kalibaf and Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. This is exactly the point where the story moves away from ordinary diplomacy and becomes a story of influence, access, and power networks. Because the moment Kushner's name appears, the question is not only why he is part of the talks. The bigger question is how decisive a role a businessman, whose ties with Gulf money have been deep, might be playing in such a sensitive geopolitical process. Kushner's presence is surprising also because his identity was never built on a long diplomatic career. Yes, he served as a senior advisor during Trump's first term, and his name had surfaced earlier too in Middle East diplomacy on issues like the Abraham Accords. But even then, his core identity remained that of business, family influence, and political proximity. That is why today, when the Trump administration once again appears to be using him in such a sensitive space, critics do not see it simply as a story of national interest. They also see in it the shadow of personal networks, family trust, and private capital. And the truth is, Kushner's story is exactly like that, where power corridors and business corridors touch each other at many points. If you go to the roots of this story, you will find that Kushner's strength was not built only because of his connection to the Trump family. He already came from an affluent real estate family. Raised in New Jersey, Kushner carried forward his family's real estate business legacy and later became part of the most powerful family circle in politics. Then his marriage to Donald Trump's daughter Ivanka Trump gave him four things at once: business, glamour, media attention, and political access. This was not just a family relationship, it was also his permanent entry into America's elite power structure. In the years that followed, this very proximity became his biggest capital. But Kushner's real flight began after leaving the White House. In 2021, he started a Miami-based private equity firm called Affinity Partners. At that time, many people thought this would just be another investment vehicle, the kind many former political insiders create. But very soon it became clear that this was no ordinary fund. According to Reuters, Saudi Arabia's public investment fund made a $2 billion commitment to Affinity. Later, fresh capital also came from Gulf investors like Qatar Investment Authority and Abu Dhabi-based Lunate. And by March 2, 2025, Affinity Partners' assets under management had grown to $4.8 billion. In other words, this was no longer just one businessman's company. It had become a financial platform fueled by Gulf sovereign money, backed not just by strategic capital, but also by geopolitical questions. Now this is where the line begins that made Kushner the most controversial. The $2 billion investment from Saudi PF was itself so large that it sparked a debate over political ethics. Reuters had earlier also reported that some officials inside the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund had objected to this investment, yet Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman pushed it forward anyway. That is why critics repeatedly ask, was this just an investment or a financial extension of the relationships built during the Trump White House years? Kushner and his supporters call it normal global investing, but the questions do not end. Especially when the same man later starts appearing again in Middle East diplomacy. If understood in Indian rupees, the Saudi PF commitment of $2 billion alone comes to well over 16,000 crore. And this is only from one source. According to Reuters, capital linked to Qatar and the UAE further increased Affinity's firepower. So while saying 16,000 crore business spread across the Arab world may sound powerful as a headline, the broader picture is even bigger than that. Kushner's actual Middle East-linked financial ecosystem is not limited to a single 𝐮𝐿. It is a much larger story of Gulf sovereign wealth, cross-border investments, and influence-based deal-making. That is exactly why when he sits at the diplomacy table, what sits behind him is not just a visiting card, but a trust network worth billions of dollars. In September 2, 2025, Forbes estimated Jared Kushner's personal net worth at a little above $1 billion. According to Forbes, Affinity Partners and the bets linked to it pushed his wealth into billionaire territory. In other words, even within the Trump family circle, Kushner has now become one of the wealthiest faces. In the same Forbes tracking, Ivanka Trump's individual net worth was estimated at around $100 million. This contrast is also interesting. On one side, being part of a political dynasty, and on the other, building independent financial heft in the world of private capital. That is why Kushner's story looks different, because he is no longer just Trump's son-in-law. He has emerged as a billionaire power broker in his own right. But money alone does not explain everything. Real understanding comes when you look at how Kushner has used that capital. According to the Forbes profile, by 2025, Affinity was managing more than $5.4 billion in assets. Reuters gave the figure of $4.8 billion in AUM in March 2nd, 2025, which grew further in the months that followed. That means Kushner's firm is not merely collecting money. It is also growing its footprint through deals, stakes, private equity positions, and strategic partnerships. In such a situation, his role in the Middle East no longer remains limited to friendly relations. He also speaks the language of capital allocation, access, and regional business relationships. And that is exactly what makes diplomacy more complicated. Now understand this in the context of the current Iran talks. Today, when news is circulating about US-Iran peace talks in Pakistan, reports from Reuters and AP clearly state that Kushner is part of the delegation. For the Trump administration, this may be a matter of family trust and prior Middle East exposure. But to outside observers, it looks like a textbook example of conflict of interest. Because when the same person whose firm received massive financial backing from Saudi, Qatar, and the UAE is seen active in regional diplomacy, then it is natural to ask whether he is representing only America's national interest, or whether his personal and business relationships are also quietly present in the equation somewhere. Some analysts also believe that Kushner's biggest strength is not his official designation, but his access. Trump trusts him, Gulf leadership knows him, and the business world sees him as a serious capital operator. In diplomacy, that kind of informal credibility can become a great strength. Where a rigid bureaucrat might get stuck in protocol, such an insider can open informal channels. But that same informal power also creates the greatest danger, because its accountability framework is weak. The public cannot always clearly see whether what is being placed on the table is foreign policy, personal rapport, or future deal flow. Kushner's whole story moves inside this fog. One special feature of Trump-era politics has been that the boundaries between family, business, and statecraft have often not remained as clear as before. Jared Kushner is one of the brightest examples of that model. Senior advisor in the White House, then private equity founder, then Gulf-funded billionaire, and then a return to the middle of Middle East diplomacy. This trajectory is unusually dense in itself. Usually, a diplomat's credibility is built through treaties, embassies, and years of public service. Kushner's credibility was built through family access, deal networks, and regional relationships. That is why opinion about him divides very sharply. Supporters say he is result-oriented, critics say he is an example of monetizing influence. His personal life has also always been part of public fascination. Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump first met in 2007. Because of religious background, the relationship had its ups and downs. Then Ivanka converted to Judaism, and on the 25th of October 2009, the two got married. Later, this relationship did not remain just a celebrity marriage, but it became a symbol of the convergence of America's most talked about political business families. Later still, their presence together in the White House only made that public image stronger. Even today, when Jared Kushner is discussed, his marital connection, Trump family status, and business expansion all move together. But the most important question in the story still returns to where we began. Why exactly is Kushner so important? The answer is that he stands between three worlds. The first world is Trump politics, where family, loyalty, and personal trust matter enormously. The second world is Gulf capital, where sovereign wealth funds look for people who have direct access to Washington. The third world is Middle East diplomacy, where along with official negotiations, informal back channels also run in parallel. Jared Kushner connects all three of these worlds. That is why he appears so powerful, and for the same reason, so controversial. If we speak only of wealth, the picture is quite clear. At the personal level, Forbes places him roughly at a $1 billion net worth, making him a billionaire. At the business level, his Affinity Partners manages billions of dollars. At the funding level, Saudi PF's $2 billion commitment, followed by Qatar and UAE-linked capital, made the firm even stronger. At the family level, his wife Ivanka Trump's individual net worth is also estimated at around $100 million. In other words, this is not some ordinary affluent couple, but a duo that holds a high place in politics, prestige, and private wealth all at once. But the real twist is bigger even than wealth. The question is not just how much wealth Kushner has. The question is what the source, timing, and geography of that wealth are saying. When fund flows linked to countries like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE go to a person who then appears active again in sensitive theaters of US foreign policy, money stops being just money. It becomes perception. It becomes influence. It becomes suspicion. And many times, it also becomes a shadow over the credibility of diplomacy. That is why Jared Kushner's story is as much a business success story as it is a story of power and proximity. So what is the conclusion? The conclusion is that Donald Trump's son-in-law today is not just a rich businessman, but a geopolitical businessman whose identity has been shaped by wealth, White House connection, and Middle East access all at once. His personal wealth is above $1 billion, his firm manages billions of dollars, and his financial footprint in the Gulf region is so deep that every diplomatic appearance he makes carries with it fresh cluster of questions. Perhaps that is why when the world watches the Iran talks, it does not just see ceasefire, sanctions, or peace formulas. It also sees whether the man sitting at one corner of the table might also be reading the future business map. If this video has taught you something new, or if you feel this information should reach more people, don't forget to like and share the video. Your small share can become valuable and useful information for someone else. If you have any questions related to this topic, or if you would like to share your opinion with us, be sure to write in the comment box. We read every question and suggestion from you, because your feedback inspires us to create better content. And if you want to keep receiving such interesting and reliable information about business, the economy, and the world in the future, then don't forget to subscribe to our channel GRT Business and also press the bell icon so that you get notifications of every new video directly. At GRT Business, we always strive to provide you with accurate, balanced, and reliable information. Our news and analysis are prepared based on information obtained from various news agencies, public sources, and public opinion. We make every effort to verify and validate each fact as much as possible, but in case of any possible error or dispute, the responsibility lies with the respective sources. Our only aim is to present you with a correct and trustworthy perspective so that you can understand any topic better.